For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale. Today on The Gist, we have a special guest, Lieutenant General AS Kalkat, the IPKF commander between 1987 and 1990. In fact, the last man off the island when the Indian Peacekeeping Force returned from Sri Lanka. It was India's first overseas deployment after independence, and one which is not much talked about, but something that is that lessons have to be learned from. And I'm privileged to have General Kalkat speaking to us for the first time in many years, perhaps. General Kalkat, thank you for your time and welcome to this program.
My pleasure.
So, you were in London doing a fellowship at the IISS that time.
That's correct.
And so you had to leave it midway, I guess.
Yes, well, 3/4 finished.
3/4 finished, okay. And when you sort of came and took charge and went into Sri Lanka, the objective of the IPKF was flowing out of the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord signed on 29th of July 1987, which is the day that we are broadcasting this program. So what were the initial objectives that were given to you, the political objectives by the government?
Initially, a division had been sent there and into Jaffna, flown in, and its task ostensibly was to accept the surrender of the weapons by the LTT, who it was claimed by the Indian government that he had agreed to surrender them.
Exactly.
But when the general who was commanding the 54 Division went there, he was ceremonially handed over a revolver by Prabhakaran.
Right.
Incidentally, that revolver had no firing pin, it was rusted.
The obsolete weapons were given, apparently.
Absolutely.
But initially, when the IPKF landed in Sri Lanka, immediately following the accord, it was seen to be just I think it's a casual term, but a walk in the park, because India was supposed to just ensure that the accord is implemented, that the LTT and the others were disarmed. When did the objective change to trying to enforce the peace accord?
Yes, that was a defining moment. There was a background to it. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was in North America. He had attended the Shogam in Canada, I think at Vancouver.
Yes.
And then was flying into Washington to address the United States Congress.
Correct.
And I was told at that time in Sri Lanka, our troops, they were having a difficult time. And I was told that when the Indian Prime Minister is going to be addressing the US Congress in Sri Lanka, in the United States, it will be a shame if the second largest army in the world cannot capture a couple of militants or bandits, as they call them. So my first task was to go and capture Jaffna.
Right. Okay.
And which was done with casualties. Incidentally, in the capture of Jaffna, a Paramveer Chakra was awarded. And after capture of Jaffna, then I was told to now continue to implement or enforce the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord.
But also there's a political dimension to it.
Yes.
Now, of course, with hindsight, one can say, somebody like a student of conflict like me, that perhaps the Indian government, that time the political dispensation, the political executive, was hasty in signing that accord because neither side was happy with India, neither the Sri Lankan government led by President Jayawardene nor the LTTE. So, looking back, do you think there should have been more deliberations politically and diplomatically?
You see, the background to signing the accord has to do with India's internal domestic dynamics. And the hue and cry in South India, in Tamil Nadu,
Yes.
particularly, was that the Tamils were being ill-treated by the Sinhalese
Exactly.
in Sri Lanka,
Yes.
and they wanted India to act.
Correct.
Now, with this kind of a situation, apparently Rajiv Gandhi, the Prime Minister, thought that perhaps to placate them, he would get this accord, and by a power projection. The power projection was firstly in the form of sending food and supplies to the beleaguered people in Jaffna area.
Right. The Operation Pumalai that had took place.
Operation Pumalai. When they were stopped by the Sri Lankan Coast Guard, then the Indian Prime Minister ordered the Air Force to go and airdrop them.
The AN-32s went and airdropped.
Yes, and that show of force
Yes.
literally forced Jayawardene to
Accede to the...
accede to the request and sign the accord, or
Correct. The pact there.
the
Yeah.
Indo-Sri Lanka Accord.
Accord. Yes, sir. That was the background. But like I said, earlier, that having signed the accord, both sides were unhappy, and then it fell on IPKF to correct the course in a way. So, what was your challenge in the field? You mentioned IPKF had, LTT had enough weapons, but also were the forces, our forces, hampered by the lack of intelligence, one, initially, and secondly, lack of familiarity with the terrain. Was that the challenge?
Both. Firstly, lack of familiarity. We didn't have any maps of Sri Lanka.
Really? So you had something of this kind, this tourist map.
Absolutely right. Actually, I
really?
got a pamphlet distributed by the British High Commission, which showed a map of Sri Lanka.
Really?
And that was the first map I had. I got it enlarged, by the way.
I see. Oh.
And secondly, the North and Sri Lanka people spoke Tamil.
Correct.
My soldiers, except for those from the Madras regiment, do not speak or understand Tamil.
Yes.
And it's not an easy language
Not
to
at all.
learn
Not
fast.
at all. Yes.
So we had both these problems.
Exactly. Do you think if the IPKF had stayed on for at least another year, if not more, perhaps the task of getting LTT under control or even eliminating some of its military wherewithal would have been achieved, and IPKF would have done its job fully?
Yes, I do believe that.
But I was coming to the sort of IPKF's leaving the island.
Yes.
That time, I think even the political circumstances had changed. Premadasa had become the president
Yes.
in Sri Lanka, and then in India we had VP Singh governments. VP Singh government was a coalition government. Rajiv Gandhi had lost elections.
Yes.
Did that play a part in IPKF coming back prematurely, if I may say so?
Let's put it this way. It was an accord signed by two parties.
Right.
And therefore, no one party can abrogate it. My task was clear to me to implement the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord.
Right.
But when Premadasa was dead set against the accord itself, came to power, the first thing he said was, he sent, in fact, I got a message from the president's house that the president of Sri Lanka is sending me a message. And will I receive it? I said, of course I will. And I will be at the airport. He was sending it by air.
I see.
I will be at the airfield at Trincomalee, which was my headquarters,
Right.
to receive him. So I went there, and when the aircraft landed, out stepped the Sri Lankan army commander, army chief.
Yes, they call him army commander there. You're
Yes.
right.
General Hamilton Vanasinghe,
Vanasinghe.
who was a good friend of mine.
Right.
We came down and he said, can we take a walk along? So we walked a bit and he said, he called me by my first name,
I see.
Amar. My president has told me to order my soldiers to confine the IPKF to the barracks
Oh, okay.
and order you to leave within 24 hours or 48 hours.
Okay.
I do not know what I should do.
Right.
So I told
Hamilton, yeah.
Hamilton, I said, Hammy. I used to call him Hammy.
I see.
Or sometimes Vani also.
Vani, okay.
If I were you and my president ordered it, I would do what he ordered. He said, if I do it, what will you do? I said, I will do what I have to do.
Okay.
To defend my soldiers,
Right.
to defend my national flag, and to defend the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, the task which I have been assigned to carry out.
Exactly.
He said nothing after that. He went back.
I see.
But,
Did he deliver the letter?
pardon? No, he took the letter back.
Okay. That's interesting.
He took the letter back.
Right.
Meanwhile, Mark Tully, the BBC correspondent, used to be in Colombo. He had got a whiff of what was happening. He
I
was
see.
very well informed.
Right.
And he chartered a special plane
Oh.
to land. And when I reached my headquarters back, he was there, hanging around there,
I see. In Trincomalee.
in my headquarters.
Oh, I see.
Because we never kept anything secret then.
Right. Okay.
So I went back and I called my chief of staff. I said, take down this operation order. So when I was dictating it, not only was Mark Tully listening, but the liaison officer of the Sri Lankan army, who used to be attached to a headquarters,
Right.
which was normal,
Yeah.
was also there. I said, let him listen. With that, I said that this is what has been ordered by the president of Sri Lanka,
Right.
that it is possible they may attack us. In case we are attacked, these are my orders.
Okay.
And there I gave that once the line is crossed, that is the northeastern province line, which was under control of
The IPKF.
IPKF, so and so mechanized
Right.
brigade, that was tanks and mechanized
Sure.
brigades, will attack and go forward to the place from where the threat is coming. And so infantry division from Jaffna will advance southwards
Right.
towards Anuradhapura.
Yeah.
First objective will be Anuradhapura. Second objective, orders later.
Okay.
Implication was quite clear that the second objective after Anuradhapura has to be Colombo. Right.
Compact.
Thereafter, one thing I was at a disadvantage, air.
Okay.
So I rang up the Air Force Chief in India, Air Chief Marshal Mehra.
Right. OP Mehra was there.
Yes.
Yes.
O.P. Mehra. No, not O.P. Mehra, P.K. Mehra.
Oh, PK
O.P.
Mehra.
was
Okay.
earlier.
Earlier. Okay. PK Mehra. Okay.
So I used to call him Polly
Right.
because he was my schoolmate,
I see.
though my senior in school. But we had been colleagues at staff college also.
Okay.
And in many discussions there, where we used to have of having a joint command system, he used to always say, what do you guys want to do to have it under your command in the Air Force? When you need us, when the chips are down, we'll always be there.
There. Okay.
So that's where the
That's
discussion
where
used to
the
be.
discussions. Yeah.
So I rang up Polly. He was now the chief of army staff,
Right.
chief of air staff.
Chair staff. Yeah.
And so I said, Polly, sir. He said, hey, Amar, what's the problem? I said, remember our discussion in Staff College, Wellington? I just want to tell you the chips are down.
Okay.
They were following it. He said, I understood.
Yes.
I'm telling Keeler, he was the Air Chief of Operations.
Denzel Keeler.
Trevor.
Trevor Keeler, okay.
Or Denzel, one of the
Yeah,
two
one of the two
brothers.
Yeah.
To do whatever you want.
Right.
So I told, sir, fine. So I got a call from Keeler.
Keeler.
He said, sir, what? I said, first thing is, project. I'll give a warning to Sri Lanka.
Right.
And you buzz their airfield at Trincomalee.
Wow.
He said, done, sir.
Okay.
So he sent the Canberras,
Right.
which, by the way, by that time had become photo reconnaissance aircraft.
Exactly. Not fighter aircraft.
And they had no war material in
That's
them,
right.
bombs, it's hardware.
Correct.
But they are huge
Yes.
and they make a lot of noise and they're very large. He sent a flight of
Canberras.
Canberras escorted by Jaguars on
I
top.
see again. Okay.
And he buzzed Trincomalee Airport at very, very low level.
Height. Yeah.
It is a frightening sight, awe-inspiring. It put the fear of God in the guys, the Sri Lankan Air Force brothers in Sri Lanka. So after that, I got nothing from Sri Lanka or from the president.
Right.
And they said, we will talk to the Indian government. So then the talks carried on and then, the withdrawal order came.
Exactly.
When the withdrawal came, such precedents had happened earlier. And two fresh in my mind were the Russian or the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan.
In 1979, yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
And before that, you've probably seen movies also of the American withdrawal from Vietnam.
Yes, of course. 1975 from Saigon.
And if you recall, in the American withdrawal, people were running to cling to the helicopters and they were
At the embassy rooftop, in fact, very famous
They were
footage
running
is
to
that.
cling to them to get out.
Right.
And for the Russians, they had those tanks and those attack helicopters behind to protect the withdrawing columns.
That's right.
No, I didn't have that kind of capability.
Yes.
But I was determined that I wasn't going to have that happen.
Correct.
So I said, fine. So then I made a plan to withdraw in phases.
Right. So you got off the island, but looking back, what are the key lessons and what should the Indian citizen know? What did the IPKF do in those 2.5, 3 years? That is an important factor to understand what happened almost 30 years ago. If you can elaborate.
Right. I think the first one is that the India-Sri Lanka Accord was flawed.
Right.
You see, forcing by show of power projection the Sri Lankan government to accede to giving the northeastern province, which is 1/5 of the area of Sri Lanka, a kind of autonomy to
1/3 of the population, perhaps.
1/5 of the population.
1/3 of the country to 1/5 of the population.
1/3 of the country to 1/5 of the population,
Right.
I think was never going to be accepted
By the majority.
by the Sinhala majority.
Right.
And therefore, from here ensues the first lesson that such conflicts are political in nature and ultimately need a political resolution.
Right.
And an outside power cannot give a political dispensation. Only the government of the country can give it to its citizens.
Exactly.
Americans learned this lesson the hard way in Iraq and in Afghanistan.
And they're now retreating from Afghanistan.
Right? Because the only other alternative is a regime change. They tried that.
Yes.
It didn't work.
I'm thanking you finally for your time and for the first time perhaps speaking on camera so candidly about your experience, your command of the IPKF.
Thank you, Nitin. It was an honor for me to command the Indian soldiers. And it was an honor for me to have led them and see their brave acts. They shall not be forgotten. And I'm sure our nation shall not forget their sacrifice.
So that was General Kalkat speaking to us on the IPKF and his tenure as the commander of the IPKF in Sri Lanka. So do keep watching Stat News Global. You are aware our YouTube channel where you can subscribe to, our social media handles where you can follow them, and of course keep sending us feedback and comments which are valuable to us so that we can make more such programs and bring you more such information. Until the next time, it's goodbye.